For several years, Albanian organized crime has been on the rise in European markets. Known for their classic prostitution activities, the latter have begun moving into more complex criminal circuits.
Plus de 70 personnes interpellées, c'est le résultat d'une vaste opération policière menée dans 5 pays européens dans le milieu des stupéfiants. La Belgique est concernée.
L'enquête qui a commencé il y a quasi un an ciblait plusieurs clans de la mafia albanaise.
Of course, it's the drug business that has pushed them up the crime ladder, especially in Europe's largest market where they are now well established. Moreover, the cocaine supply chain of the Compania Bello group has been considered by Europol as one of the most active organizations in cocaine trafficking. This is due to their presence at the 2 most important ports in Europe. So, where does the success and expansion of this Albanian-speaking mafia come from? Albania is first of all very well situated. It occupies a strategic point in the drug business. For example, the Balkan region is very well established as a transit point for heroin. Heroin often originates in Afghanistan, then passes through Turkey and finally arrives in Albania, where it is usually cut, thus reducing its purity. This technique allows them to increase their profits considerably. Control of a Balkan section and the Adriatic Sea allows them to distribute the drug to other markets. By way of illustration, the latter had already been accused in the 1990s of having supplied up to 90% of the goods in Switzerland.
This is where many of the narcotics, someone called it a narcotics highway, many of the narcotics that are produced or brought to Albania are brought to the rest of Europe in this body of water.
Thus, the prices for this drug differ, depending on its final destination. On the other side, via the same network as heroin, we have cannabis, which is exported from Albania to Turkey. According to the Italian anti-mafia division, Albania is the main source of cannabis in Europe. Indeed, the cannabis industry, which grew rapidly in the early 2000s, has resulted in a distribution in part of Europe.
A shootout in Albania's so-called cannabis kingdom has left 1 police officer dead and 2 injured. It came after a raid on the village of Lazarat on Wednesday, where an armed group has holed up and is yet to surrender. According to Italian police, 900 tons of cannabis are produced there annually.
Revenues were estimated at 4.5 billion, which was nearly a third of Albania's GDP during this period. But as the Albanian government has pledged to beat the expansion of cannabis production,
we will bring normality and law and order to that region. This action will continue to go on. The police are working on it. They are fighting against armed militants.
a drastic eradication of cannabis plant cultivation was required in 2016. The police carried out an operation to destroy the massive plantations in the territory. However, in 2019, there was a new resurgence of production. Criminal organizations started to grow closer to lucrative customers, creating their own indoor cannabis farms. Closer in Italy, Albanian-speaking criminal groups have become involved with Italian mafias in drug trafficking, which regularly gives rise to various police operations. It was the geographical proximity that allowed a link between the two criminal organizations. Indeed, it was in the 1990s that Albanian migrants arrived in Italy in search of a better life. Some of those who arrived illegally were sometimes recruited into Italian criminal groups. Starting with all kinds of smuggling, passing drugs became the most lucrative. They then started selling cannabis in Italy, one of their largest markets.
Started their criminal activity in Italy, and they have kind of like taken lessons from 'Ndrangheta or other mafia organizations in Italy.
By supplying Italy, the Albanian clans were gaining in importance and beginning to have influence by creating direct relationships with the members of the Italian mafia. Then came the turn of cocaine.
In the last 2 decades, criminal groups from the Balkans have also entered the lucrative business of cocaine trading.
In the 2000s, some Albanian-speaking criminals moved to South America, partly as a favor to Italians who had close links with the cartels there.
Criminals from the Balkans were randomly contracted from the Italian mafia and other criminal networks to drive cocaine from ports throughout the continent and distribute it in the streets of European capitals.
This contact portfolio and the experience accumulated over the years has enabled them to establish themselves in South America and create partnerships to distribute cocaine to Europe. For example, Ecuador has emerged as an attractive location for Albanians and other criminal syndicates. Around 2012, an Albanian named Arba Sakac established his business in the banana trade, which was also used to smuggle cocaine in shipments to Europe. These shipments also came from Colombia, resulting in a record seizure in Albania. Various court cases have ensued as a result. According to the DEA director, Ecuador was becoming a melting pot of foreign traffickers from Albania to China, all of them getting the goods to distribute them to their respective countries. But it was the situation in Colombia that changed everything.
Colombians voted no to the first peace deal signed by President Juan Manuel Santos and Marxist FARC rebel leader Rodrigo Londono last month.
The Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia, which controlled large parts of plantation territory, began to lay down their arms.
Una gran noticia para Colombia, el proceso de paz avanza, las FARC están ingresando a las zonas y en los próximos días esperamos culminar esta operación.
But other armed groups soon emerged to take control. At the same time, there was a political stop to the eradication of aerial plantations. Not to mention the peasants who continued to cultivate for lack of alternatives offered by the government. In 2016, cocaine production skyrocketed in Colombia. From 2013 to 2019, it has increased by more than 4 times, together with the increase in demand for traffic to Europe. Thus, the Italian mafia, the 'Ndrangheta, would control 80% of the cocaine that reaches Europe, according to Italian prosecutor Nicola Gratteri. Not being able to handle all these huge quantities on their own, the Colombian suppliers started to look for additional partners, including the Albanians, already well positioned. Thus, the Albanian mafia has gone from an organization that gives a logistical hand to the Italian mafia to one that is able to run its own supply chain in Europe.
Creating and running the whole chain, from arranging big shipments directly from Latin America to street distribution throughout Europe, have empowered and raised the prominence of these groups.
This is well demonstrated with Compania Bello. Composed of a dozen Albanian criminal organizations, benefiting from a privileged relationship with South American cocaine producers, Compania Bello enabled its members to import and distribute large quantities of drugs from South America via Dutch and Belgian ports. Indeed, from his prison cell in Ecuador, Britan Rejepi coordinated a sophisticated transnational operation, controlling the flow of cocaine from South America to Europe. Răjepi had been accused of a double murder in Albania and an armed robbery in Belgium, for which he was locked up in a prison in Merkspla, Belgium. But the prison was not suitable for criminals of his kind, so he escaped. In 2014, he still ended up in prison in Ecuador for drug trafficking.
Albanian-speaking Compania Bello criminal group, labeled one of the most active in Europe.
So, Compania Bello would function as a transnational criminal federation that aims to increase the profits for each member. For example, Aldi Drizdari had Albanian gangs in Rotterdam and Antwerp receiving cocaine and activating distribution.
Nou, we zien wel eens mensen rondlopen die soms zwaar bewapend zijn. Dat kan je zien met camera's, soms ook door de ogen en oren, en met name de ogen dan op die terminals. Zien we mensen rondlopen die daar absoluut niet thuis horen. Die zijn daar, zo weten wij, om de verdovende middelen, om de drugs uit de containers te halen.
Similarly, the brothers Gerti and Edmund trafficked cocaine from the Netherlands to Italy, Germany and other European states. Estimates show that these two brothers were distributing at least 50 kilograms of cocaine per week, which gave a turnover of about 70 million euros annually. But the figures could have been much higher. Finally, in September 2020, the Albanian criminal syndicate was dismantled, with 20 arrests in 10 different countries. The investigation lasted 5 years. It was the biggest operation against Albanian-speaking organized crime. But what the Albanian mafia has done is to change the whole business model. Traditionally, those who import, wholesale, and sell on the street work separately. Instead, Albanian criminal groups have taken over the entire process, from ordering to distributing the goods to Albanian-speaking affiliates in Europe, such as the UK-based Helbananes clan. Helbananes became known to the general public thanks to their social medias, where they posted themselves with huge amounts of money, drugs, cars, to improve their reputation and recruit young people. Not to mention their rap songs, where they talk about trafficking.
You're talking about Albanian crime, and this is very much a group that's small in number but big in impact. So we have seen an emergence of violence, particularly around enforcing the drug trade.
According to the National Crime Agency report, Albanian groups represent only 0.8% of organised crime in the UK, but play a disproportionately large role in the cocaine market. Indeed, they've taken control of this huge market, where the capital, London market, is already estimated to be worth over 1 billion euros annually.
Albanese bendes teisteren ons land. Ze zijn betrokken bij zware delicten in de georganiseerde misdaad met veel geweld tot gevolg.
The Albanians eliminated the competition, not just by violence but by their savings, which allowed them to offer the same product at lower prices. Indeed, they were getting cartel cocaine at around £5,000 a kilogram when competitors thought they were getting a good deal from wholesalers in the Netherlands selling at £22,500.
Iedereen die een beetje de Europese pers volgt en de literatuur, die weet dat men vanaf Spanje tot en met Duitsland, Noord-Duitsland worstelt met die enorme toestromen van cocaïne. Deels als gevolg van de overproductie in Zuid-Amerika, deels vanwege het toegenomen gebruik in de westerse samenleving.
But for the model to work indefinitely, it was necessary to have control of the European ports. Indeed, most of the cocaine that comes to Europe arrives by sea, especially via the big European ports such as Antwerp or Rotterdam. For this, the Albanian mafia had to collaborate with the Ndrangheta. Collectively, the ports in Belgium and the Netherlands employ over 200,000 people. According to police, a cohort of them work for Ndrangheta, but also for the Albanian mafia.
Belgjika ka dhe një komunitet të madh të shtetasve shqiptar. Pjesa tjetër është fakti që Belgjika është një vend shumë strategjik për grupet kriminale, sepse është një nga urat kryesore të trafikut, sidomos të kokainës.
Often, Albanian-speaking organizations use Belgium and the Netherlands as an access platform to smuggle cocaine to other European states. There are reportedly about 15 criminal groups in the Benelux that have links to those based in South America. In 20 years, Albanian criminals have gone from being outsiders to the biggest distributors in one of the world's largest drug markets. And according to a former member of the National Crime Agency, the Albanians are now well positioned, and their importance in the European cocaine trade is only likely to expand.